you know, guys, this is, of course, Mr. Number One, George South, inyourhead.com, and just, you know, there's not old school or new school. There's just right and there's just wrong.
All right, and welcome to In Your Head Wrestling Radio. I'm the internet icon, pride of the Pilgrims, cat with 9 lives, handsome Jackie Jones. My right-hand man is not here this evening, but we are joined by Richie Steamboat. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I did bring this up because he's a legend here on In Your Head. He's just a legend in wrestling. Is George South, who helped set this up. And I know he was he your first trainer or one of your first trainers?
Yeah, you know, George South is a very good friend of mine. I talk to him all the time. I actually just got off the phone with him a few minutes ago. He's leaving his training school at High Spots here in Charlotte, North Carolina. George was the first guy that I trained with, and my dad was a big inspiration in that and making sure that took place. My dad had wrestled with George back in the NWA days and knew that George was a very good guy, and they had developed this friendship over the years and knew it was the perfect place for me to start. So yes, George South was my first official trainer. And I'll tell you what, I learned a lot from George. George gave me a lot of tips, and in my third match ever in wrestling, I went 45 minutes with George in front of 6 people. So I'll tell you, that was quite an experience.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I've always said it. I think it. Well, not just think. I know it speaks highly of George. That guys like Richie Steamboat and Ric Flair and Tully Blanchard and other people, sent their children to be trained by George.
Absolutely. You know, I know Bobby Eaton's son has trained with George. I've trained with George. The late Reid Flair trained with George. Several other people have trained with George, and he's been able to show a lot of longevity in his career. He's still out working to this day, and he's a smart man, and he's a great guy, and he believes in God, and he's got all the same values that our family has, and I think that's another reason why he's lasted so long in this business is because he's got a great head on his shoulders, and he knows what he's doing.
Definitely. Now, do you think when you would go on to to Florida, do you think having like that base and like traditional like old school wrestling that you learned with George that helped you improve better or put you in a little different standing than some of the other people?
Absolutely. Going back, I was born in 1987. My dad retired in 94, so I didn't get to see a whole lot of my dad, in action as a kid. But going back through video and seeing, in the 80s, 70s, the 60s, even back to the 50s, watching wrestling and how things were done, that's George's style. Everything is very old school, and that's what I really love about George. Is he's never changed. He's never faltered for anyone. He is who he is, and you either like him or you don't. And I personally love him. He's one of my best friends. Mm-hmm. So I definitely learned a lot from George, and that experience was definitely a turning point for me in my career in understanding or starting to understand the wrestling business.
Mm-hmm. I would think people listening to this might think, if you watch wrestling, something from the 50s, you obviously can't just transport that today and it's going to work, but you could take different elements of things from that. What are some of the things that people did, like when you'd watch like 50s wrestling or 60s wrestling, that you would pick up and like incorporate?
Just their mannerisms, a lot of the way that they came to the ring, or their mannerisms in the ring before the match. It was very kind of this monumental kind of moment that they had in the ring, before their match began, and they were warming up like they're getting ready for this huge fight. And you can translate some of it, but because of TV and the way that things have changed over the years, and everything is consolidated now into one organization, World Wrestling Entertainment. You kind of have to change with the times. But if you can pick a little thing out of each generation and kind of make it your own, you've been able to do something pretty special. I was fortunate enough to, when I started my wrestling career, I decided I wanted to kind of do it the old school way, learning from George and my dad, that kind of instilled that in me, that, there was really only one way to do it. And it was to travel the world, and it was to learn as much as you can from as many different people as you can, and develop your own style. Of course, my dad is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Hall of Famer, and has arguably one of the best matches in history with Randy Savage at WrestleMania 3. I mean, that's without question. I have to throw arm drags. I have to chop. I have to do cross bodies. It's not a question. Those are things that I have to do, which I love to do. And if I chop you, I will make you bleed, just so you know.
Uh-huh.
And those are things that as a Steamboat, that's what I do. Those are trademarks, but, I wanted to develop my own style and be able to, incorporate lots of different styles of wrestling, because, that's what, all the legends and everyone that we look at now, that's what they did. I was fortunate enough to train with George, and from there I went out to I trained with George for about 6 months, and then went out to Harley Race's school, WLW, and just being able to train with him, and him, be sitting there at his table, in this warehouse drinking his coffee, and to get out of the ring and be able to just to walk over to him and ask him, what did you think of that, or what should I do differently, just to get that. Harley Race is such a legend in our sport, and be able to just personally ask him, any time of the day, to get his knowledge was priceless to me. It was a great experience for me. And he has a connection with a company called Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan, and I was able to go to Japan, and I was selected to live in the dojo. So I went over there and trained in their dojo for 3 months. And that was an awesome experience, man. I wanted to learn the old school way and be able to travel the world and see all these different styles. And the Japanese style is so different than anywhere else. The first thing that they asked me when I dropped my bags off was, if I had a mouthpiece. Because every single night someone was getting knocked out. I mean, it is respect and the law of order and the way that things are done there is unlike anywhere else I've ever experienced. The culture and the wrestling world, it's just a totally different animal there. It's on the front page of the paper next to the sumo wrestling and the baseball. Wrestling is a true sport there still. So I had a great time doing that, and I'm so thankful that I was able to get that opportunity. And from there, I went back to the States and wrestled for a few weeks, and then went to England and wrestled for Brian Dixon. That was quite an experience because, that the English style is a little different than everywhere else. It's very fluid and kind of seamless storytelling, and it's got this beautiful art form to it. And I was able to pick up a few things that kind of helped me with my arm drags and storytelling ability and things like that. And from there, I was able to go back to the States for a few more weeks and do some more independent shows, still honing my craft and trying to learn as much as I can. And I was able to go down to Puerto Rico and wrestle for Carlos Colon for about 3 months. So again, getting that luchador, that's Mexican style wrestling, kind of similar to English style, very fluid, very, seamless, kind of like in and out of holds, up and down, very fast motion, kind of thing. So that was really cool. And being able to go to all those places, that was my idea of what my father did and what all of our legends have done, is they've been able to wrestle these all people from all over the world, and being able to experience that was very important to me to understand, because I only knew one way, and that was the way that my dad did things. You know, my father was a very strict person, is a very strict guy. He's a hard-working guy, and he's instilled some very important things in my life with family, hard work, and desire and passion. You know, those are, you know, 3 or 4 things that if you've got all 3 of those, you can pretty much do anything you want. If you work hard, you can do anything. So that was instilled in me at a young age. And once I set to do something, I've never given up and I've never stopped. So, you know, I was able to go to Puerto Rico and wrestle down there. And after that, I was in talks with WWE and was able to agree on a contract with them. And I moved down to Florida. And I kind of started my WWE career down there at FCW. And then I was fortunate enough to be the Jack Briscoe champion, the tag team champions with Seth Rollins, and the Florida heavyweight champion. So I was definitely thrusted into a role model position, which I wanted, and you know, something I was looking forward to. And as NXT started, things were really going really fast, and I was in the semifinals for the first ever NXT championship. And a few weeks earlier, I had hurt my back in a house show doing a moonsault, which is a backflip for the people that don't know. And I lost feeling in everything from my chin down. And I could move everything, but I couldn't really feel it. And after a few days, the feeling came back, and I started to, you know, I still had a whole lot of back pain, but I kept wrestling through it. And it got to the point to where, you know, at the time I had a 2-year-old boy, and I could barely pick him up. And, you know, I said, you know, what if I was in a wheelchair, you know, right now? What if the next bump I take, you know, I'm paralyzed forever? And I really didn't say anything to any of the WWE staff or anyone at the time. I just kind of was sticking it out because I was put in this position to, you know, definitely succeed. And I didn't want to give up that opportunity at the time. And you know, after speaking with them, they decided, you know, I flew up to Pittsburgh, and they decided to kind of take it slow and kind of put the brakes on things a little bit. I've had a few back surgeries and wanted to get my back healed up and let my body give me time to tell me when I was ready to continue, if I'm ready to continue. So, you know, that's kind of the nutshell of things. I want to be able to let the fans know what, you know, my career and how it started, and it's definitely not over yet. I mean, give you an example, my dad at 56 came back at Backlash with, you know, tore the roof off the place.
With Jericho.
You know, with Jericho. So, and then WrestleMania in Houston about a month before. And, you know, I'm just glad to be here. I've been able to spend some time with my family the last few years and really get healthy. I feel good. You know, the wrestling has just been part of my life so forever, you know. I mean, you could literally say it's in my blood.
Which is a pun on your real name as well. So.
Indeed. Yes, Richard Blood is the real name, which is also a very mean name. So, you know, it's just something that's been missing in my life for the last few years. And it's something that I've always been a part of growing up as a kid. And, you know, the fans have given me so much of their time and their cheers and their appreciation. And I feel so humbled by the experience that, you know, I want to give back as much as I possibly can. You know, I've given my body and my life to the sport, and I still feel like I owe them more. I appreciate all of our fans, the Steamboat fans, all the wrestling fans in general. They've given us, without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So I just want to say officially, thank you very much for everything you've done.
You said about, you know, had a never stop attitude, and so you get this injury, and you said that you're hopefully not done. Now, do you plan on returning to in-ring wrestling?
That's a question that I've been asked a lot. I've been doing quite a few interviews, about 4 or 5 a week, for the past few months. And, I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say that. I definitely love the sport and want to be a part of the sport in any way I possibly can. Right now, I'm just doing some appearances. I've got appearances booked through March of next year, and I'm doing things like that. But I'm just kind of scratching the surface right now because I've been gone for a few years and trying to get my back healthy and my wife went through law school and she's now a practicing attorney. And I've got another little boy on the way due in March as well. So a lot of good things going on in my life. And there has been something missing, and that's wrestling. So, I definitely feel the desire. Now, my body may tell me otherwise, but we will see.
Now, you've been away from wrestling for, I think, 4 years now, even just, going to shows and appearances and stuff. Now, you said about you wanting your back to get better, and you were with your family. But would it also be hard to be around that when you were injured, just knowing that you couldn't be in the ring? Did it take you a little while to, be okay to be around it?
It did. It really did. At first, I was, I had the injury, and I really wanted to take some time away and just I was so ingrained. It was so ingrained in me, and every day of my life was involved 24/7 in with wrestling. Waking up in the middle of the night to eat just to try and gain weight. Every 2 hours eating a meal. And the whole wrestling side of it, it draws you in. If you're not in the ring and you see somebody doing something, you're like, hey, no, you should not do that. Or yes, you should do that. Or, you just want to be a part of it so much. I had to hold myself back because, I had to think about my family first and take care of my body because, if I was to continue, and God forbid I was to get, paralyzed, that wouldn't be doing anybody any good. So, I reluctantly took a step back, and I can't tell you how much it was bad timing for me personally because I was given this opportunity in NXT, and if that injury would not have happened on a simple house show with no cameras, I'm probably talking to you tonight as a champion or a former WWE champion or Continental champion of some kind.
Because if you look at the people, your contemporaries in FCW and NXT at the time, I mean, they're some of the biggest stars on TV right now, or at the very least, had made it and had a run in WWE.
Yes, exactly. It was just really, really bad timing on my injury, and everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that, and maybe I needed to take some time for myself and my family to really.
I don't want to be a downer here, but was that? I would think it would be a mixed bag seeing guys like Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, and because at one part it's like, hey, these are guys that I trained with and was friends with, and it's great to see them up there. But was there ever part of you that's like, it just sucks that I'm not also up there with them, not necessarily their spot, but along with them.
Absolutely. There's always that, that feeling that you get, you've worked so hard and you've trained for so long to get to a position, and you're so close to this opportunity, and, the rug kind of gets pulled out from under you. I mean, that's kind of just natural human nature, I guess. But, I'm very proud of all those guys. They've done awesome. They're good friends of mine. And I couldn't say one bad thing about them. I'm very proud of them and happy for them and their success and what they've done. And it just, at the time, it really sucked for me. that's okay. You know, I'm cool with that. I understand. You know, that just is one of the things that happened. You know, you step into the ring, and every time you get in there, you take that chance. You know, unfortunately, that's the business that we're in. That, you know, you take these chances and these risks, and you know what you're getting into when you start it. You know, before I even started wrestling, I talked to my father about it many times. You know,
now go on, sorry.
You know, there's a point to where you get, you know, you could be injured forever. You know, you could be paralyzed, or you could, you know, wrestle for 6 months and then, you know, decide maybe this isn't what I want to do. But, you know, once you step into that ring and you take that chance, you know, it's on you. So.
Now, how old were you when you knew like you wanted to be a wrestler? Was it? Because I knew you wrestled at a young age, you know, collegiate wrestling. So was it something you knew you always wanted to do?
Absolutely. You know, I started amateur wrestling when I was 5 years old. And I did amateur wrestling all the way through high school. I won 5 state championships here in North Carolina. I won a national title. I was on a junior Olympic team. I was on an Ohio All-Stars team. I did a lot of collegiate wrestling and amateur wrestling. And in growing up, it's just something that was just, it felt so natural to me. It was just the next step for me was to get into professional wrestling and follow in my dad's footsteps, as a lot of people say. I hate to say that because, you know, I will never be able to fill those boots, but you know, I've got about 10 pairs upstairs in my closet, and I can fill those just fine. So, you know, I'm very comfortable in my own skin, and you know, it is what it is, and I'll tell you, the story's not over yet, and that's another fact to the matter is I'm not done with the sport. The reason we're doing this interview right now is I want to be able to get my story out and talk to you guys and let you guys know what I'm up to and how things are going.
Mm-hmm. Now, was your dad, was he always supportive of you becoming a wrestler, and did he ever, I don't want to be like, say he didn't support it, but did he ever, you know, try to tell you maybe this isn't something you want to do, or was he discouraging at all?
You know, growing up, my dad was always very supportive in everything that I did. He always gave me an option, and made me make my own decisions. And you know, once I told him, you know, this is really my passion. This is what I want to do. I remember we were sitting at a YMCA gym in Mooresville, North Carolina, and you know, I was working out with him, and I was sitting on the bench, and I looked at him and I said, I want to be a wrestler. And he kind of brushed it off. You know, I've said it to him several times before, you know, and, you know, I said, listen, I said, I want to be a wrestler. I want to do what you do. I said, you know, that's what I want to do. And, he said, all right. And that was really the end of the discussion. At that point, we kept working out, and it really wasn't brought up again the rest of the day. But shortly after that, within like 2 weeks, I was training with George. My dad called me. He said, hey, all right, you need to go down to High Spots down in Charlotte. This is the address. You need to be down there 4 times a week for 3 hours every day and train with George for 6 months, and we'll see how it goes. So, you know, he left it up to me to decide, you know, what I wanted to do. But he definitely was very supportive and gave me a direction to go to be able to do that.
Yeah. Now, I assume you don't have any memories of when you were on TV with your father and your mother, like on the wrestling program. But I assume you saw it later in life. And what was that like to see you as a little kid on TV with your father?
It was pretty cool. You know, I was very young at the time, but I definitely get some flashbacks or memories of instances of him in the ring and me in the stands or on the front row, you know, sitting there watching him. And I particularly remember a moment that I was like, you know, I don't know how old I was, but I was very young. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. and I was just bawling my eyes out because he was just getting his butt kicked up and down the ring over and over and over again. And, you know, after the match, I went back and saw him, and he's like, it's okay. I'm all right. Everything is all right. The doctor's going to fix me up. I'll be fine. You know, and as a kid looking back at those memories and just to be able to part of that very small crowd of family that was a part of that and be able to play with all the kids of all these legends that we know today. And it was a great experience, and I'm so humbled by it and appreciative of everything that my dad has done. He's worked so hard in his life, in his career, with his family, and he's sacrificed so much. Honestly, I couldn't ask for a better father. You know, and a lot of people ask me, they say, what is it like being the son of a legend, you know, a WWE Hall of Famer, you know, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, one of the best matches of all time, arguably, you know, WrestleMania 3 with Randy Savage. And to me, he's just my dad, you know, just like you have a father and all of our listeners have parents. We go to Christmas and we give out presents, and we tend to argue sometimes when we disagree, and we love and we laugh and we talk. You know, to me, he's my dad. I know a lot of people maybe, you know, they can relate to that. You know, everybody has, you know, parents, and they, you know, go through, you know, arguments or fights or, you know, excitement and love and passion and all that great stuff. And, you know, I'm so appreciative for what he's done and the sacrifices he's made. And just to be able to grow up in his shadow has been amazing.
You know, oddly enough, and I said this before the show, this is not just because you're on here, but my first memory of watching wrestling was your father. It was I watched it ever since I can remember with my grandfather, and it was what I always remember. The first thing I remember is Don Morocco and Mr. Fuji hanging the dragon on the WWF TV. It was like Superstars, I believe, and my grandfather loved Ricky Steamboat and hated all the bad guys, and I remember him being very upset over that. But that's my first memory of watching wrestling.
And what a moment that was!
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could just, you know, if you look back at tapes of that match, and you know, the camera pans to the crowd, you know, people covering their eyes, people not wanting to see it, screaming, some people crying. You know, I mean, what a monumental moment that was in wrestling, and it is a lot of people's fondest memories. You know, that hanging there from that belt or rope or whatever it was at the time. You know, and it was is definitely he's definitely one of the best in the business. I got to say, and I'm not saying that because he's my dad. He truly is. Has mastered the art form of professional wrestling.
Yeah. Now I gotta ask, because you mentioned training in the Japanese dojo, how like rougher, or maybe it was, I don't know, but how much rougher was that in the dojo as compared to training in the States?
You know, I'm gonna make a statement that a lot of people might disagree with, but a lot of people haven't done the things that I've done, and I would say about 90% of the wrestlers in the States couldn't handle it. That is an animal amongst itself. Those guys are, you earn everything that you get there. You know, my day started with 1,000 free squats without stopping. And if you stopped, you had to start over from zero. And it takes you about 2.5 hours to do 1,000 free squats, touching the ground with your fingers. And that's how you start your day. That's before training. That's before working out. That's before everything. I remember practicing my chops on a metal post. And it was quite an experience for me as a young boy going over there and becoming a man really quick. It was awesome. I loved every minute of it. I mean, just you know, I'm the type of person where I've never given up anything, and I've always given everything to what I'm doing at the time. And it was just another challenge in front of me that I wanted to master, and something I wanted to do, and I was never going to give up. And so many times, you know, oh, do you want to go home? Do you want to go back to your family? Heck no. I want to stay here. I'm not going anywhere. You can throw whatever you want at me. I'm not going. You know, and that's the Japanese mentality is you have to earn your respect, and they break you down to build you up. And you know, to live in a dojo in Japan is a very difficult thing when you're the only person that speaks English, and all the other guys, they, you know, looking back on it and talking to them now or in the past, you know, they all speak English, but they're not going to talk any English to you. They're only going to speak Japanese. So you don't really know what they're talking about, and you're just trying to do exactly what you're told and not step on anyone's toes and do everything right. And it's a big mind game over there. And it's definitely some shoot wrestling, I'll tell you that. I mean, there's, like I said, every single night someone's getting knocked out. And, you know, the careers in Japan are a lot shorter than a lot of careers in other places. And that's, you know, that's the hard-nosed wrestling that it is. You know, the respect is earned, it's not given.
You mentioned going over there. I know you meant as a young boy, then becoming a man. But were you a young boy for any of the veterans there?
I was not a young boy for a particular veteran, but I had the same duties. I mean, I was considered. I'm an American, so I was considered a gaijin.
Okay.
But I had the same duties. I didn't have a particular mentor that was guiding me, but I had the same duties as all the other young boys did, carrying all the bags, setting up the locker room, you know, preparing the gym for working out, cleaning the gym, making dinners, all of the other stuff that they did, I did.
You mentioned, you know, the dojo and doing all the free squats and everything. Were you around Bill DeMott at all in FCW? And if so, do you have any thoughts on him and his training?
I was around. Bill DeMott was down there when I was training with him. I prefer to leave just no comment on that.
All right, fair enough.
I think Bill DeMott has a great family, and I think he's a good guy. I'm
a personal fan of his. We had him on the show 3 or 4 times, but I'd never had him, you know, train me, so I don't, you know. But just as,
you know, I definitely
like
think he has a lot of passion for the sport, and I think that he's a family man. You know, he's definitely a hard-nosed guy for sure.
Yeah. Did George South make you listen to a lot of Journey, by the way?
Of course. It wouldn't be George without Journey.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the Jack Briscoe 15 Championship, and for people who aren't familiar with that, do you want to explain what that is?
Sure. It's a 15-minute match, and it's the most pinfalls in 15 minutes. So, you know, a lot of times that can go, you know, 0-0, or it can go 1-0, or, you know, I've had plenty of matches with Seth over that Jack Briscoe 15 title, and we've gone 1-1 and tied, and 1-2 several times, and it's been it's a pretty cool little deal that they had down in FCW. You know, that we had a lot of good stuff going on, and I know that, you know, once NXT started and everything moved to Orlando, it shifted, and it became even better. The facility down there is amazing and great, and they've really turned it into a factory. They're able to turn out guys pretty good.
Yeah. Have you followed NXT since your injury? Because, you know, it's really became like its own brand itself.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, I haven't followed it as much as I used to, but it definitely is its own brand, and they've branched out. In the early stages of NXT, that's the talks and the direction that they were going is they're going to start doing house shows and start, you know, it's going to be its own brand and going to be moving on and up and out of kind of the small territory area of Florida. And that's what they've done with it, and they've done it very successfully. So they've done well at it, and I'm very proud of everyone that's on there, all the guys and girls that I wrestled with. Ashley is particularly doing really well, and I'm proud of her. Ric Flair's daughter, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very, very happy for her and what she's accomplished.
Yeah, and it looks like, I don't know if it just came out, I think, today, that might actually main event the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Not only will they be in the Hell in a Cell, Charlotte and Sasha, but that might be the last match, might be the main event on the show, which is that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I'd like to see that moonsault from the top of the cage.
Yes. It was pretty.
I don't think that'll happen, but I would like to see that.
Yeah.
And safely. But I would love to see that. She definitely stepped up to the challenge, and she's awesome. I really like her. She's a good person.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think she's one of the best heels on WWE, because she's very natural. When she came in as a babyface, it was, well, I think she really blossomed as a heel on Raw. It was she's I don't want to say naturally unlikable, but I think it's like, I mean that as a compliment, not an insult.
No, absolutely. I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I agree completely. She's a natural heel. Even talking with her and growing up with her, our families would go on vacations together as kids, and she's a little natural heel. She's always been that way, and it's just something she's developed into her own character and who she is, and been able to portray that on TV very well. So she's done an awesome job.
Yeah. Speaking of that, growing up as kids, I remember when Reid was really young and he was on Nitro, and he had a little segment with Eric Bischoff. Do you remember that? Were you jealous at all that Reid was on Nitro? Because he was like 12 or so at the time.
Yeah, I do remember that. I was happy just kind of being behind the scenes. Yeah. I wasn't really interested. I was more interested in driving the forklift in the back.
Right.
To be quite honest, than rather be on TV. I was more interested in like messing with the wrestlers, and I was trying to drive the forklifts and wrestle on mats in the back and just terrorize the place. That was more my thing.
Yeah. Who were some of the wrestlers then that would be cool with you and mess around with you?
All the guys. I mean, every one of them, from Sting to Hulk. I mean, everybody that was around at the time. Everybody would, they were all really cool to me and play with me. Piper. Anybody that was around at the time, I was always trying to pull his little skirt down and all sorts of stuff. So, just growing up was just an amazing experience to be able to just hang out with them and know them as, who they were.
Yeah.
Or are.
Al will appear in the chat room. He wants to know, did you ever date Charlotte when you guys were younger?
No, I did not. We've always been good friends, but I never have dated Charlotte.
All right. So I don't know if that was I think he must have thought about it. Bruce Briscoe here wants to know, did your dad show you how to do the perfect arm drag?
He did, and I'll tell you, it goes back to my early training days with George South. My dad, I had been training for maybe about a month and a half, or maybe 2 months, and I was working on my basics and getting things down, and I just couldn't get that arm drag. And my dad came down for one of the training sessions, and down at High Spots, it's a very kind of cool, relaxed place. They got a lot of wrestling figures, and it's a big warehouse, but they have a ring, and they have a couple couches the guys can kind of hang out and stuff. And my dad was just sitting down there watching George work with me and a couple of the other guys. And I was trying to throw that Steamboat arm drag, and finally, I kept looking over at him, and I wasn't getting the approval from Dad. I could tell, and finally he was just like, all right. He just gets up off the couch and rolls in the ring and grabs George and shoots George off and throws like the perfect arm drag. After being out of the ring for 15 years, he's just sitting on the couch and just jumps off the couch and throws this beautiful arm drag. And I was like, okay, all right. And just being able to see him do that really helped me. And within a few arm drags after that, I had it down. Mm-hmm. It was, it's just something to where I had to see him do it, and the way that he did it, he can explain it, but I'm a very visual person. And once he showed me, it was like butter. It was just natural. Mm-hmm. I could do it in my sleep now. It's just something that once you know how to do it, it comes very easy.
Mm-hmm. I will mention too, coming up in November 18th. Is this your first appearance that you're gonna have? Are you signing autographs? What's going on?
I had an appearance last Saturday in New Kent, Virginia, for Classic Pro Wrestling. That was their first show. And the week before that, I did an appearance in Lenoir, North Carolina. On the 18th, I'm going to be in Beach Mountain, North Carolina, of November. And then the 19th, I'm going to be in, I believe you pronounce it Chicotee, Virginia. Okay. My dad is doing a signing up there for Fusion Wrestling, and I'm going to actually be there with him. So it's going to be the first time that him and I are going to be together doing a signing, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to be together. So we'll be at that event together, and then the following week we'll also be at WrestleCade together.
Oh, so
WrestleCade here in the Carolinas, that's going to be an awesome big event. I'm trying to limit myself to, I'm slowly getting back into the wrestling scene, and I'm doing a lot of interviews. I did an interview right before I got on with you, and I'm doing about 4 or 5 a week, and just trying to get my feet back in. It's something that I've been missing in my life for, like you said, 3 or 4 years now. And it's something that I definitely want to be a part of. I want to be able to give back to the fans that have given me and my family so much, and anything that I can do to be a part of it, whether it's announcing right now or doing appearances. Or a few weeks ago, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bandolero and Legend cars.
No.
They're small race cars that they build here in the Carolinas, and they race all over the country. And I hosted the Bandolero Nationals, which is it's a small car. It's got like a 30 horsepower Briggs & Stratton motor. These cars go about 60 or 70 miles an hour. But the ages are from 8 to 12 and from like 13 to 19. So these are younger kids, trying to follow in their dreams and their passions and what they like to do. And the trophies were actually wrestling belts.
Oh, wow.
So I was asked to, it was pretty cool. So I was asked to go down there and host this event in Atlanta at Atlanta Motor Speedway and hand out the wrestling belts to the winners.
Nice. So,
anything I can do to inspire someone or to give my message or tell my story and to be a part of it, that's what I want to do. That's what my passion is. I've always loved wrestling, and I always will. I'm not saying I'm not going to wrestle again, and I'm not saying I am. Mm-hmm. Just right now, I'm just listening to my body and slowly easing myself back into the sport.
Mm-hmm. Did you have much interaction with Vince McMahon?
I did not have much interaction with Vince. I had a few times on Monday Night Raw taping, but I had more interaction with Hunter, or Triple H. He was my boss, and had plenty of conversations with him. Another awesome guy and a huge mentor to me, and a legend in our sport. And really, Stephanie and him are taking it to the next level, and so appreciative of everything that they've done and given to the sport, and everything that Vince has given to the sport, and what it is today. And they've done their thing, and they definitely done a good job at it.
Yeah. Who were some of the guys in Florida that you would say helped you a lot, helped you the most?
As far as the FCW,
Yeah.
I would. Are we talking about trainers, or are we talking about athletes or wrestlers?
You could say either one, either guys in the ring that helped you, or or management or trainers, either way.
I think as far as trainers go, I really felt a really strong connection with Norman Smiley. He's a great guy, and he taught me a lot of really neat holds, and helped develop the style and how to get into things and how to get out of certain holds. And he was always a very good wrestler.
Mm-hmm. Did he teach you the big wiggle?
What's that?
Did he teach you the big wiggle?
Oh yeah, I've seen the big wiggle a few times. Right. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I was a big fan of
so. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I was always a big fan of Norman Smiley. I think he's really underrated.
I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
He was definitely a showman, and he's down there doing his thing. So, he's a great guy, and I've nothing bad to say about the man. He's an awesome guy, and I think you're absolutely right. I think he was completely underrated for what he accomplished in the sport and his style and what he brought to it. So, for sure. As far as wrestlers go, I really enjoyed working with kind of an easy choice. I really enjoyed working with Seth. Mm-hmm. Him and I really had a good chemistry and a similar size and style, the way we did things, and we worked well together. I also liked working with Cassius Ohno, another good guy that I met while I was in Japan, and then he got signed to a deal for WWE. Let me think here. Who else? I don't want to disrespect anybody and forget somebody,
I understand.
But a lot of guys down there helped me, and in return I helped them, and we learned from each other. That was the whole thing. We were trying to gain knowledge and learn the TV style of wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Were you surprised Cassius Ohno didn't make it to the main roster?
I really was. He's got a lot of talent, and I was very surprised. I don't know the whole story behind that, so I can't really talk on it. But I definitely was surprised that he didn't make it to the main roster.
Mm-hmm. I got a question here on Facebook. What was it like being ranked in the PWI 500?
That was kind of it was a little bittersweet for me. It was pretty cool. I think I was in somebody had told me this the other day. I was ranked 99th out of the top 500 in 2012. And that was my last full year of wrestling, and being ranked 99th was pretty good to me, but I've always wanted to be first. Mm-hmm. I know I would have moved up the ladder even further if I wouldn't have had my injury, and that's why I kind of say bittersweet, because it was awesome at the time, and it was pretty cool, and I appreciate that ranking very much. But man, I feel like I had so much more to give. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And plus, I would think, like you said, being bittersweet's also up till this point was the last year you wrestled, being ranked in the PWA 500.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a good time for sure. But
Matt Marlborough wants to know: do you remember your father's WCW music? He's a family man, and do you have any thoughts on that?
I do not remember that music. Now, I've heard it, I have heard it, but I don't remember it actually playing,
Okay. Like him
in
coming
an arena.
Right, yeah.
Of course, I've heard it, but yeah,
Do you think that was a good wrestling theme song?
not really.
No, yeah. That whole album, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. What do you think?
No, it's something I've talked about here since the beginning of the show. It's kind of that whole album. It's the Slam Jam album. I really enjoy it because I grew up with it, and I think it's funny. But as an actual theme, no, it's. I mean, you can't really it's all positive things, but it's not like a guy
You can't
coming to
take
the
it too
ring.
serious.
Yeah, a guy coming to the ring. Oh man, he's a family guy. I hope he really wins this fight. It's very bizarre, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't think it was very fitting. But I think everyone kind of knew he's a family guy, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. When FCW changed to NXT, what were some of the biggest changes? And I know you weren't there that long, but
the biggest changes even started back in FCW, before the NXT facility was built. I mean, I would say even a year to a year and a half before the facility, the location of the facility was even built. It was already, the process had been started in FCW. Hunter was coming down all the time, talking to us and discussing about what things were going on and the plans and the things that were going to happen. I know a lot of that was kept under wraps and not talked about at the time. But it was definitely the cool new thing that was going on. And really the stir of WWE was, a lot of the questions of what was going to happen and this new project that Hunter had taken on and what he was going to turn it into. And he's been awesomely successful at it. I mean, it's a great product. They have great shows, and they're running live events all the time. And they've definitely turned it into a brand that's going to stay around. So it goes a little further back than a lot of people think, but it was he wanted to definitely put his stamp on things, which was a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Hoosier Highway here in the chat room, he wants to know the giant lizard that your dad had for a while in WWE. Do you have memories of that? And did he actually have to carry it to city to city? Do you know?
The what now?
When he had a big lizard for a little while. I think it was a Gila
monster. Yeah, Komodo dragon.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep. He did have to take that thing from city to city. It was my mom wasn't very fond of it.
Yeah.
But it was we kept it, like, I guess my dad has told me stories of keeping it like electrical tape around its mouth just to make sure like nothing would ever happen. It was kept in the cage in like a box truck. Obviously humanely, but it was fed and taken care of and all that. But it did travel. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, a few legends obviously passed away the last couple of years. Some really big ones like Roddy Piper you mentioned and Dusty Rhodes. Do you have any stories involving Roddy? You mentioned Roddy Piper already, but Roddy or Dusty?
It's very tragic that these two legends in our sport, have passed away, Dusty Rhodes and Roddy Piper. They both have been inspirations in my life. Dusty personally was the main promo guy down at FCW for the entire stint that I was there. And I've had many, many, many conversations with him in private and discussing things, from family life to interacting with the camera and talking and emotional feelings and from any aspect of life. I've been very fortunate enough to get to know him on a personal level, and I'm so sorry to hear about his loss. And it was a huge loss for the wrestling community and to his family, the Rhodes family. And Piper has always been a showman and done his thing. not a bad thing I can say about him. He's definitely he developed his character and who he was, and definitely put his stamp on wrestling. And my thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and I'm sorry to hear about his loss as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I knew you grew up with the Flairs. Were you close to Reid?
Yes, I was. I was close with Reid. We definitely grew up together. We had amateur wrestling together. I miss Reid a lot. I think he was an awesome guy, and he had a whole heck of a lot of potential. I would have loved to see a second generation feud between him and I. Mm-hmm. But that just wasn't in the plans, and my hearts and prayers go out to their family, because I miss Reid a lot, and I know that they do too, and that's all I can say about that.
Yeah. Now, mentioned earlier about the November 18th show, and you will be there. Also, George South will be there, and Ricky Morton will be there. And it just made me think. I think the best sellers in the business both have the name Ricky. So if you want to be a great, babyface, you should. Anyone out there, you should get the name Ricky, I think. But do you have any?
Yeah.
Do you have any stories with Ricky Morton? He's one of my. We've had him on the show many times. He's a great storyteller.
Oh, he is a great storyteller, and I love Ricky to death. I saw him last week in New Kent, Virginia, and he's definitely prolonged his life. He's still out there working, and he's out there doing his thing. And a lot of guys that he wrestled with have retired, or they can no longer do it. But he's found a way to keep it going, and I got to commend him for that, because he's been able to go from city to city, and he still wrestles because of the passion and the desire he has for it. He's an awesome guy. Mm-hmm. I love him to death.
Yeah, and he has a wrestling.
And I'll tell you,
yeah,
he has some great stories.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I was gonna say he has a wrestling school now, and I've heard good things about it. And he'll be coming on the show probably in November to talk about his wrestling school. But that would definitely be a great person to learn to wrestle from for anyone in that area.
Absolutely, he was. It is one of the best baby faces in wrestling history. You want to learn how to be a good baby face, or how to be a good wrestler in general. If you live in his area, I would go to his school for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do people follow you online if they want to, see what you're up to, appearances, and what you got coming up?
Well, right now, I just have a Facebook page, which I started like an official Richie Steamboat page about a month ago. There's several other ones out there that are like fan pages and things like that, but you can pretty much decipher which one is mine. And you can follow me on that, and I will be starting a Twitter account in the next few weeks. It's just kind of everything's really happened fast, and within the past month or so, I've gotten quite a few bookings and a lot of interest, and a lot of, I kind of stepped away for a while, and a lot of people asking questions on what my plans are and where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. And if anybody wants to follow me or friend me on Facebook, please do. I respond to any questions on there and try and do the best that I can. So I would recommend anybody go through Facebook at this time.
All right, very cool. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and continued success, whatever you do in life, and wrestling or otherwise.
Absolutely. It's definitely not the last time you'll see me in or out of the ring. I'll definitely be involved in the wrestling and in the wrestling scene. So, we're not going to put a point on it yet, but we'll see what happens.
Excellent. Well, I hope positive things come your way.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great night.
Thanks. You too.
Okay, this is John Moxley, and you're listening to InYourHeadOnline.com.